Hello everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the MuseScore Café. This is my regular series going into 2024, so happy New Year everyone. We'll be taking a look at various aspects of using MuseScore, and in particular, being the first Wednesday of the month, this is going to be an Ask Me Anything session. Meaning you are in the driver's seat, you tell me what you need me to tell you about, and I'll do my best. There was one question that already had come in to me via someone offline that I'll try to answer about time signatures. But definitely just start asking away in here, and I'll just try to keep up. As I mentioned in the pinned message I have at the top, there is this question mark emoji that will make your question easier for me to spot, especially if you put it at the beginning. So while you're typing your message, you can either, I find actually the easiest is type colon and then quest. And as soon as you get the first few letters of the word question in there, you'll see you can get that emoji. So there is just a way to help me be sure I can see your question. So the first thing, as I mentioned, someone had already asked me about, and I don't know if he's actually going to be here or not, but it's something for me to talk about anyhow. It has to do with time signatures and changing time signatures and having one 2/4 measure in a piece that's otherwise 4/4. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a score for grand staff. And that's something I often do as a starting point when I'm doing these demonstrations, just because then I have multiple staves to work with, but it's not overwhelming. Let's say I just want to have a 2/4 measure in here. So let's enter some notes. C, 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 and D, 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 D. And let's say I just want a couple of E's. And those is going to be a 2/4 measure. And then maybe there's going to be 4 F's. And let's say I just want those 2 E's to be their own 2/4 measure. Well, the way you're going to do that is you're going to, there's sort of an indirect process here if you've already added the notes. If you've already added the notes, we'll take a look at what's going to happen here. I'm going to go to the time signatures palette, and I'm going to enter a 2/4. And you'll see that now I have the 2/4, but it affected everything to the end of score. But then I can select the next measure and select 4/4. So when I say it's an indirect process, well, I had to add the 2/4 and then add the 4/4 afterwards. That's because there's only one measure here, right? There's only one measure of 2/4. But I do want to show you something else also. So I'll undo those changes. What if I wanted 2 measures of 2/4? Or, I want these 2 measures to be converted to 2/4. If you select more than one measure and select and then click 2/4 in the palette, you'll see it automatically puts the 2/4 at the beginning and restores the old time signature at the end. So if you want a temporary time signature change just for a given passage, if it's more than one measure, you can do it all in one shot like that. Select the whole passage and then click the time signature. And if you've selected more than one measure, MuseScore will restore the old time signature at the end. If you've only selected one measure, MuseScore doesn't restore the other one because it doesn't know, did you only select one because you only wanted to change one, or did you only select one because it's easy to only select one, and maybe you really wanted it to change from that point on. So MuseScore has to guess, and that's how it guesses. So if whoever had asked about that is watching this, hopefully that answers your question. If not, you can watch it later. I see Peter is talking about copy and paste, and I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about copying and pasting a passage involving multiple voices. So let's see if we can unpack this a little bit and make some sense out of it. First of all, let me undo that time signature change. So I've just got this here. Let's say, okay, you're copying voice 2 notes and rest and paste it into a measure as voice 2. All right, so let me add some notes in voice 2. I'm going to go to the first measure here, and I'm going to switch to voice 2, Control-Alt-2, and I'll enter some eighth notes. I'll type A, G, F, E, F, G, and then a quarter note, E. I don't know. I always try to make musical sense for no good reason. Let's say I just want to take that voice 2 line and copy and paste it into measure 3 here. It's possible to do this sort of thing using the selection filter. That's usually going to be your way to do it. So let's go ahead and open the selection filter. View selection filter. And you'll see this opens the selection filter by default. It shows up as another tab within the left panel here. And I'm going to leave it there for a second. No, actually, I'm not, because otherwise I'll forget. If you use the selection filter a lot, you might find that instead of having it tabbed with all these other things, maybe you'll find it useful if it's more always available. I don't know. So if you've never looked at this sort of customization, check this out. I'm going to take that and I'm going to drag it, and then I'm going to, it's kind of hard for me to drag. What did I just do? I may have just messed up my palette, but let me reset that palette. Reset palette. No, okay. I'm going to move that selection filter down here. And now you'll see that I've got kind of a split view now. So this is a thing you can do. You can dock these panels in different locations. So if you're using the selection filter a lot for this sort of thing, you might find this useful to keep it kind of down here. And now you can keep flipping the top tabs here while having the selection filter always open. You can also dock it on the right side. You can dock the properties panel on the right. You've got all that kind of flexibility. All right, that said, let's go ahead. Oh, look at what I did. I added a 5-4 time signature. That's what I did when I was fiddling around with dragging. Let's fix that, shall we? Undo, Control Z, yay. All right, here's my passage, and I want to select and copy only voice 2. So I've selected that measure. What I want to do, the filter, if you think about the word filter, filter means removing something, right? Filter is you filter something out. You filter impurities out of your liquid or whatever you're doing. So we want to filter something out. I've selected now the full measure, but I want to filter out measure the voice 1. I want to only have voice 2 left. I want to filter out the voice 1 stuff. So I'm going to turn off voice 1 in the selection filter. And you'll notice that voice 1 is now no longer selected. You can tell that because when it was selected, it was blue. These notes, let me zoom in a little bit more. These notes are blue, meaning they're selected. When you unselect voice 1, they become black. I think an older version, they didn't update the color right away. So that was a bug that was fixed some time ago. But now I still have a range selection here, right? I still have the blue box here. So I still have a range selection, and that's important. You need to have a range selection for copy and paste of notes to work. I have a range selection, but voice 1 is deselected. So now I can use Control C to copy. Now, here's the trick. What if I come over to this measure here and select it and want to paste it? I'm clicking in this measure. You can't tell I'm clicking in this measure, but I am. I click in this measure, and you'll notice I can't select it. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, why can't I select that measure anymore? The reason is I've told the selection filter I don't want to select voice 1 anymore. And that's all that there is in this measure. So that's sort of it's not exactly a bug, it's sort of a design flaw in the whole concept of how the selection filter works. And at some point, I know the powers that be would love to be able to, would love to redesign this. And so I fully expect at some point down the road that'll be redesigned. As it is, they basically stole it from Sibelius. So I can now re-enable voice 1 in my selection filter. That is the trick. So now with voice 1 reselected in the selection filter, it doesn't change the fact that I've already copied only voice 2 to my clipboard. So, you know, select the measure, select your source first, turn off voice 1, do Control C to copy, then re-add voice 1 in the selection filter. Now you can select the destination, and now I can do Control V to paste, and you'll see it very nicely pasted that passage in. So because I stopped to explain so many things, it made it look a little worse than it is. Let me show you how fast it is in practice. Select this measure, turn off voice 1, Control C, turn on voice 1 again, select the next measure, Control V. So it really does take just a few seconds. So Joachim, I know you told me how to pronounce your name once, and I'm sorry, I don't remember. I just want to look at your customizations because I'm always curious about such things. So I can see that you've created yourself a favorites palette, which is kind of nice. I mean, I know Martin Tantacruel, you know, the guy who kind of I don't know, was really instrumental in a lot of the changes that have happened in MuseScore when he posted this video critiquing the user interface, and a lot of changes were made based on his feedback. And then eventually they hired him and he made further changes. That was one of the things that he had kind of recommended. He said, you know, I think everyone should have their own favorites palette and populate it however they want with the stuff they use all the time, so you're not constantly opening and closing palettes. So he was sort of an advocate for that, and that's part of how a lot of the customization features that exist now came into being, is to make it easier to do things like what you're doing here, where you have some tempo markings, you've got some repeats, you've got some clefs, you got hairpins there. You've got all your favorite markings in one palette that you're calling favorites. That's pretty cool. And then I can see that's your palettes, but then this must be your properties panel down here. So you've got your properties panel and your palettes available at the same time. You know, everyone's going to have their own different way of working that's going to work for them. So anyhow, that's how you can do that sort of copy and paste. I do want to point out one other thing that comes up pretty often. And as far as this goes, I'm going to add some more notes here. And now in the bottom staff, I'm going to add some more notes. I'm going to add the same line. This comes up a lot where you have two lines written on two staves, and then you decide, you know what, I want to take this bottom line and move it into the top staff as voice 2, right? In fact, let me make it different rhythmically. There we go. So it's different rhythmically. And you might decide you want, and actually make it partially the same because I'm trying to make a point here. So you want to get this bottom line into the top staff, but make it voice 2. Well, MuseScore has a command built in to do all of that for you. Select both of these together, both of those measures together, and go to Tools, Implode. Bam. When you do that, it has now moved that, is actually copied it, right? The original is still there, so you'd still have to go back and delete it if you want to get rid of it. But what you can see is that line is now copied into the top staff as voice 2. It's green. Now you can run, if you choose, if you notice that, hey, that last beat could have been combined into one voice. Well, if you run Implode again with just that single staff selected, it will combine where it can. So that's running Implode once will combine staves into multiple voices, but then if you select that one staff and run Implode a second time, it will combine the multiple voices into a single voice anywhere where it's possible, where the rhythms match up. Okay, so I see Bruce has a question about upgrading to MuseScore 4. So the first of all, Catalina, I don't know all the Mac buzzwords. I don't know how old that is. I thought that was the current one, but apparently it's not. I can't ever keep it straight. So the thing is, you know, MuseScore 4 is very different from MuseScore 3 visually, right? It looks very different, and if commands have been moved around a little bit, menus have, well, not menus so much, but things have shifted around in the toolbars, and it's been kind of polarizing. There are certain features that some people depended on in MuseScore 3 to tweak playback, especially, that are not in MuseScore 4. So if you are a heavy playback tweaker, like you are constantly going in and modifying the start times of notes for extra realism and things like that, you will find MuseScore 4 doesn't have that. On the other hand, the default playback in MuseScore 4 is leaps and bounds, orders of magnitude better than anything that you would ever get from MuseScore 3 because of the Muse Sounds orchestral library and now Muse Guitars as well. The degree of realism that you can get out of MuseScore 4 in the playback without having to tweak a thing is astounding. Other than that, engraving is better. Like in this example here, the spacing of these eighth notes relative to the quarter notes, MuseScore 3 got a lot of those details wrong, and therefore it wasn't really suitable for professional publications. And now it basically is. Those are two of the big picture differences. Much improved default playback, much improved engraving, at the expense of some tweakability of your playback. Then there's lots of other miscellaneous features, harp pedal diagrams and, miscellaneous, rallentando and accelerando symbols that actually play back by default. There's a lot of little, minor features here and there that are also useful. But those are the kind of the big picture differences. And if you go hunting through if you go look at the MuseScore Cafe from a year ago, basically from December of 2022, you'll see, I do demo of MuseScore 4 and kind of highlight what it's about. And that was a year ago, so a lot of things have been added to it since. All right, Schwabu, which also, again, I always apologize for never being able to pronounce things properly. So you're asking about a genre of music. All right. I want to make sure I haven't missed any other questions along here. I don't think I have. But so the thing is, genre of music is kind of an artificial construction of the human mind a little bit, like what makes something classical versus jazz. Okay, so there's like a joke. It's not even a joke. It's a true statement. Sometimes like people who don't listen to, say, country and Western music might say, oh, that country and Western music all sounds alike. Or if you don't listen to jazz, they'll say all jazz sounds alike, right? That's a common statement for people to make. And my observation is people who make that statement are not wrong. I mean, at some level, all country music does sound alike, because if it didn't, how would you know it was country music, right? I mean, I'm trying to get back to, did I mess myself up? No, I didn't. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose my connection here, but I'm still live. So at some level, all jazz does sound alike. Otherwise, we wouldn't know it was jazz. How could you tell it was jazz if it didn't sound alike in some ways, right? So that's what we're talking about, is the things about a genre that make it at all like identifiable. So here's one thing I can tell you. Oh, this is music for piano and cello. And I see it's written out with very straight rhythms, consistent 16th notes, consistent quarter notes here. There's nothing about this that's going to make someone say it doesn't sound like classical music, right? It's going to sound roughly like classical music. Now, are there more subtle details about this that are going to make it sound like something else? Well, maybe, but we'd have to hear it, right? Wouldn't be able to tell that just from the pictures very well. But it seems, if I look at it and look at what's going on harmonically here, I see basically a C major triad, a whole lot of C major triad, and then I see what looks like a G triad here, and then going back to a C triad, and then an A minor triad. So these are all kind of basic diatonic triads. Ledger, that's an F sharp against that F. That's going to be pretty dissonant right there, but only for a moment, and then it goes to a G chord. So everything about this feels fairly traditional diatonic triad-based classical music. There's a D flat here, which has its own voice leading things going on, but not unheard of in classical music either. So in any case, at some level, it has attributes that you would expect to see looking at, say, Mozart or Haydn. When I look at the types of rhythms used and so forth, the types of lines, it doesn't look earlier than that. It doesn't look like Bach. It doesn't look later than that either. It doesn't look like, Schubert or Schumann or someone. So anyhow, that's my question. All right. Let me continue here. Bruce, you've got another question here about using using Guitar Pro, and does MuseScore add bends and vibrato? Yes, it does. And in fact, MuseScore 4.2, which just came out a couple weeks ago, vastly improved the game there. And since it seems like maybe you haven't seen that, I feel like I want to take a quick detour and see if I can find you. Oops, I misspelled tentacle. I want to see if I can find you this teaser video, not the real one, not that one. Oh yeah, here's the teaser video. So check out this teaser video. This, I think, gives you a sense of what MuseScore 4.2 can do. Let's try that again with sound, shall we? Turn on sound. Here we go. You ready to hear something? So that gives you a little taste of what MuseScore can do with its playback for guitar as of 4.2. It is miles ahead of where it was prior to 4.2, and certainly miles and miles ahead of where it was for MuseScore 3 as far as that kind of thing goes. So now, is it as good as Guitar Pro? I've never heard the playback from Guitar Pro, but I would be surprised if it was better than that. There are Guitar Pro, because it focuses specifically on guitar, probably has some more obscure guitar-related features that MuseScore doesn't have yet. But one of the big things in 4.2 was adding a lot of the features that were previously not there. So if I open up my guitar palette, for instance, oh yeah, it's over here. You'll see there's some symbols here, a symbol for capo, a symbol for bends, a symbol for grace note bends, pre-bends, and so forth. And all these different symbols that exist are above and beyond what was prior to 4.2, right? These were new things that were added. So there you go. All right. So Peter asks a really good question here about the guitar fretboard. And to me, it seems like a no-brainer thing that should exist. But frankly, I can't remember ever seeing it. Someone did make a ukulele palette. I know there's a ukulele palette floating around where someone entered a whole bunch of chords for ukulele. And the thing is, because ukulele only has 4 strings, there's not a whole lot of really complicated chords. It's basically triads and seventh chords, but it gets all of them, I think. And the basic fretboard diagram palette that comes in MuseScore is very bare bones. If I add the fretboard diagram palette to my palettes here, you'll see, well, that is it. What? Is that all of them, or did I do something to edit it? Let me reset it. But yeah, there's basically major and minor triads and dominant seventh chords for C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. That's it. So not even like B flat, you do E flat. You don't even get an E flat triad or anything like that. You just get the major, minor triads and dominant seventh chords for the white key notes. So it's a pretty limited palette. And the thing is, yeah, you can customize these and create these custom ones, and then create a custom palette, and you can save that custom palette. If I add one of these symbols, like I add my C major chord and I want to make this a C major 7th, I can select it. I can come to Properties panel. Let me close that selection filter because it's getting in my way now. I can figure out how would I make this a C major 7th, and the answer is I think I do math and I decide I don't want that note there. And now that'll be a B instead of a C. So now it's a C major 7th. Let me edit the chord symbol, C major 7. I can now add that back to my palette. And if I Control Shift drag it, if you are lucky, it will drag it back to the palette. Every once in a while, the palette sort of locks itself out and it doesn't work for a little while, and then it starts working again as far as being able to customize it. But in any case, it worked this time. So now I've got C major 7, right? So it's now my palette has that. And if I did the same, I could add all my other major 7th chords. I could add all the in-between chords, right? The D flat chords, the E flat chords. People have already done this, and you can totally share this work. If you click that ... menu, then you can say save palette, and you get prompted for a name. You should end it in .xml. At least on my system. No, not .xml. It's, I think MuseScore does this correct. I think it has its own format, like .mpal or something like that. So maybe don't mess with the file name. I forget. I haven't done this so much. But in any case, you can save that file, and it's probably different on different operating systems as far as how this dialog is organized. But you can save that palette and then share it with others, send it to someone else, and then they can load in your palette of customizations. MuseScore has this fretboard diagram feature has been around for like 10 years now. I'm shocked that there's not like a really good fretboard diagram palette for guitar floating around that everyone knows about and knows how to access and can just load up. So, but as far as I know, Peter, it was Peter's question that I'm rambling about here. As far as I know, there's not. I mean, I'm sure someone has made one available and posted it somewhere on their own website or something, but I'm not aware of any really good ones that are like, oh, this is the one everyone likes. If someone creates one and lets me know about it, I will happily share it on my site, assuming you're cool with that, because I would love more people to have access to more chords. All right. So that's that question. I'm going to come back to Steinar's question in a second, but address what Allison's asking about. Fretboard strings have, pluck strings have fretboard diagrams. Are there finger positions for the bowed strings? So the thing is, there's this type of symbolism, this type of notation for fretboard diagrams is totally standardized, right? Every guitar book in the world uses similar, maybe slight tweaks in it, but this is a completely standardized thing. There isn't anything that I'm aware of like that for like violin. There's different graphic symbols that people have come up with over the years to try to indicate things, but for the most part, there's not anything so fancy that is standardized enough for anyone to have wanted to develop a whole system to input it. People have proposed it over the years, and I remember someone started to work on it a little bit and tried to make a plugin for it in MuseScore, but no, there's not anything. So you can certainly enter fingering, right? If you click this thing and you go to add text fingering, you can type in fingering as just numbers like this. I'm pressing space and it moves to the next note and so forth, right? So you can enter fingering. That exists. But as far as anything more sophisticated than that to do the other sorts of things that I know violins would have to deal with, I'm not aware of a standardized way to do it. And I'm certainly quite sure MuseScore doesn't have any built-in features to support it. All right, so Steiner's question now has to do with repeats. And if you have a repeated section, would it be possible to say, this measure here, I only want you to play the first time or second time only? This has been something that, lots of people want. And the person who implemented a lot of the stuff about repeats has some insight into how it could possibly do. How it could possibly be done. And he's done some of the preliminary work to make it possible, but so far it hasn't happened yet. And we would have to develop, how is it actually going to work? What kind of things would have to appear in the properties panel to give you proper control over it. So there's a lot of details to work out in terms of how to make that sort of stuff actually workable. Also, think about things like dynamics. You want this passage to be played piano the first time, forte the second time, right? And so there's all sorts of ways that people would need to be able to customize that. So the preliminary work, the underpinnings that might eventually make that sort of thing possible, some of that work is already in place. Some of that work has been done and isn't actually in place yet. But in any case, it's definitely something I would expect to see within the next, few updates. Probably not 4.3, maybe 4.4, maybe 4.5, who knows when, but probably sometime within the next year or so. The next couple of years, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of those features starting to show up. All right, Mike, I didn't miss your question here. I just want to come back to it. So in page footers, can you format the date element? And the short answer is no, at least not in any way that I know of. But since a lot of people probably don't know what he's even talking about here, let's take a look. If you go to Format, Style, and then Header and Footer, you'll see that the footer area lets you put in these special symbols. This $C means the copyright symbol. But when you hover your mouse there, you see this little pop-up that shows all these other things, and it only shows up for a few seconds, which is annoying. But $lowercase d is current date, $capital D is creation date. So score creation date doesn't change, right? Whenever you created the thing. So I would recommend just typing that in. If I create a score today, I would just type in January. What the heck is it? Today's the 3rd. Yeah, January 3rd, 2023. And so now there it is, right? And I got complete control over that formatting. If I go back to that dialog, one of the small improvements in MuseScore 4, borrowed from MuseScore 3, is the fact that if you go to the style dialog, make some changes, leave it, and then come back, it puts you back where you left off. That feature was added to MuseScore 3 years ago, but for whatever reason, MuseScore 4 didn't originally do it that way. Now, as of MuseScore 4.2, it does. So 2024. God dang it. There you go. That's my first time having to write the year, and I got it wrong. Oh well. But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people put the 3 first, right? 3 January 2024, and now it's 3 January 2024. So also, if I right click, you can get to the style dialog that way. Rather than going through the menu. But if you want the current date, that $D is very useful for that. So if I go over here and put $D on the right, it's going to put in the current date. Is that right? $D is current date. $D, $lowercase d, current date. Yes. So current date, and this is the format you get. This format is determined by your operating system's locale settings. So in your operating system somewhere is a place where it knows how it thinks dates are normally formatted in your country. So if I was on Windows and I went to my Windows setting and changed the locale from US to Great Britain or to France or wherever else, that might have an effect on this. To be honest, I'm not positive that would actually work, but that's the theory. This is not completely under MuseScore's control. We take hints from the operating system as how to do that, and there is no way within MuseScore to change that. So Dennis, I see your don't burn you at the stake, and it makes me really curious to see your comment. But changing, oh my gosh. So you're proposing changing DSs and DCs and repeats to something like Basic. When you say MS Basic, you're not talking about the sound font in MuseScore. You're talking about Microsoft Basic. You're talking about the programming language with go-tos. So that's considered harmful. You know that, right? That's a computer geek joke. But in any case, yeah, the whole system we have for how repeats work with voltas to have alternate endings and DSs and codas, these systems came into place to support the common dance forms of the Baroque era. Well, realistically, we don't tend to write in those same forms anymore, and they are often a poor fit for what people want to do with music. They might not just want to have different endings. They might want to have different beginnings in the repeated passage, but that's not supported, right? There's all sorts of things that people might want to do that really roadmaps that you might want to do that aren't handled well by traditional music notation. Lead sheets, man, are a common example. I mean, a typical lead sheet. I've got one sitting here in a fake book. It's designed to have just one page of information, and then there's all these stage directions that tell you play this section, and then after solos go back here and play that thing 3 times. And there's basically all these written out instructions so you can capture everything you need in less space. But there's no standardization to that. So realistically, yeah, the system that we have in place is not well suited to the task of handling modern music. My recommendation, because no, we're not going to have go-tos and things like that. I don't see new standardized music notation coming along anytime soon. Tentacles video to notwithstanding. However, my advice as someone who has led any number of ensembles, when in doubt, write it out. When in doubt, write it out. If it's not a simple repeat, if it's going to have, go to letter B and then jump over here to take the coda, but only on Wednesdays, and I don't know. Don't do that. When I say write it out, I just mean write out the full, it's okay if it takes more pages. More pages is better than train wrecks in rehearsal or in performance, even worse, because people are jumping to the wrong place because they can't follow the roadmap well enough. Keep it simpler. And more pages, more pages isn't great. It's great to save pages. It's great to not have to turn pages on the bandstand so much. Yes, I absolutely. However, I think people tend to make that trade-off in the wrong direction. I think they're so worried about taking an extra page that they shoot themselves in the foot with roadmaps that just cause disaster in performance or in rehearsal. That's my personal take on things. It's okay to need another page. That's my thing. All right. So let's see. Chris had a question about. I don't think I've missed anything else. If I did miss anything else before that, I see Marla's question or comment here also. But Chris's question about string ensemble, solo string slurs. Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. Solo string slurs for violin 1 are very slidey. I will absolutely agree with that. If I add, let's do this. Let's go ahead and add strings. I'm going to add solo violin. I'll add a viola and then a cello. And let's play a little passage here. I'm just going to put C, E, G, C, copy that, and then copy it in for viola, take it down an octave maybe, and then take it in for cello, down another octave. All right, let's hear this passage played. So, yeah, there is some sliding around going on. It is most prominent in first violin. So the thing that you can do, for at least for the first violin, is open the mixer and change it from violin 1 to violin 2. When I make that change, you'll hear. much cleaner. The idea is it's designed that violin 1 is the romantic violin, violin 2 is the Baroque violin. They could have just called it that and probably saved a lot of hassle. The viola and the cello kind of split the difference. They're somewhere in between those two extremes, and there's not alternate versions available. So this viola is slidey a little bit, right? Right? I felt like dum bum was pretty clean, but then bum bum and bum bum were both kind of slidey. If you add tenuto markings, I think that doesn't change it. But if you add tenuto and staccato, you get a much cleaner sound, right? Now, you shouldn't have to do that. I agree. And people have been complaining about this. The developer seems to feel like, no, based on the kind of music that I work with or that the people I know work with, that's what we want. But clearly, it is not appropriate for, a lot of music, especially classical era, Baroque era, and earlier, but also, things, modern pieces that are just meant to have a more precise style. So adding those articulations will eliminate that, and then you can select them. So if I click that first tenuto marking, shift click the last one, you'll see it has selected all of those articulations, and now I can press V to hide them. And now, there you go. So that's the best I can suggest right now. If for violin 1, for violin, switch from violin 1 to violin 2, that's going to help a lot. For viola and cello, it's not as bad as violin 1 as far as this goes, and it is totally appropriate for a lot of styles, but if it's not for the piece you're working on, add some of these invisible tenuto staccatos, and it will get more what you want. All right, so I'm going to come back to Marlo's comment here and just take a look at what Allison's talking about here. Yeah, so the thing is that, again, for reading music, codas and senyos and all the things about how that works, it's great. Like, how would I put this? They are designed to make certain things easy to write, but some things aren't easy to write. Like, imagine if you needed to write music in which instead of 12 notes per octave, there were 27 notes per octave, and there was notes between C and C sharp and D flat were spelled differently, and so forth. So in any case, but yeah, it is true that was joking. But I do want to address the overall point here that DS and DC and all those markings do work great for Baroque dance forms, because that in those that particular type of roadmap is quite common. But it is the case that it's not so effective for a lot of the kinds of roadmaps. So there's a lot of things that you might want to do in terms of saying, play this thing 3 times, but only on the DS. On the first time through, play it twice, and on the DS, play it 7 times. And, stuff like that, there is just no notation for, right? There is no way to notate that other than write the whole thing out. And in principle, there could have been. It just wasn't a thing in the Baroque era when these notations were being developed. So, the jazz world has developed its own set of conventions for this sort of stuff, but they only barely scratch the surface at what goes beyond that. All right, so let's come back to what Marlo's talking about with bracketed fingering. So I'm not sure. Rotatable brackets. So I'm not sure what you're talking about here, because brackets, what kind of brackets do you mean? Piano pedal brackets? Oh, no, you certainly shouldn't be using piano pedal brackets. You should be using text lines. And I think we've talked about this before, unless you're talking about something different now. But if I come over here and make sure I add my lines palette, then I can select that passage there and come over to my lines palette, add a text line like this staff text line, and customize its text to say whatever you want it to say. 1, I don't know. And then, as far as the rotating of it, as far as I know, so is this what you're saying, that I can't actually change the angle of it? So maybe that's true. Is that true? That for text lines, I can't rotate. I can only rotate the lines that are designed to be rotatable. Apparently that is true. Do you know if there's a GitHub issue for that already, Marla? That would be, because probably it's probably the case that if you created one and made it to allow diagonal in MuseScore 3 and then added that to a score and then loaded that score and then added it to your palette, you could probably get it because it's probably supported internally. But I'm not sure. Let's find out. Let's take a little tour of GitHub here. I'm going to go to GitHub issues and hunt for allow diagonal. Missing properties for pedal element. Let's get rid of the is open. It's possible they've already fixed that for a future update. Custom hooks. Yeah, I'm not sure if you'd have to spend a little more time going through this to see if any of these options actually cover that or not. Missing properties for pedal, vertical offset disabled. Yeah. So anyhow, you should maybe do a little check to see if there's an issue for the fact that those diagonal lines are not currently supported. However, what I will say is, like, yeah, if I open MuseScore 3, I'm going to do this because I'd like people to be able to see. Let me make sure I'm not missing any other questions that come up. So yeah, you shouldn't have to resort to MuseScore 3 with all the other improvements in MuseScore 4, especially for harp, things like glissandos that actually honor the pedal diagrams and all this. Man, it's a shame to have to limit yourself to all the bugs and limitations of MuseScore 3 just because of that line. So let's see if we can make this better. I'm going to add myself a line from the palette, just a plain staff text line. And now I'm going to take this thing, and can I make it? Oh, it crashed. Yeah, MuseScore 3 on my system is pretty crashy. Cut and paste from MuseScore 3 into 4? Does that work? I wouldn't have thought that would work. But if it does, that's kind of cool. But no, I would use a custom palette is what I would do. So let me try that again. I'm going to add a line. And then I'm going to come over to the inspector. I got to press F8 to open my inspector. Come on, F8. There we go. And select the line, say allow diagonal. And now I'm going to save this score. I think I'm going to save it. All right, I'm going to try again. I'll save it to my scores folder. Let me just put it in my test here. And I'm going to call it. Yeah, MuseScore 3 is like way buggy on my system. And now I can come over to MuseScore 4, open that same score. And I'm going to add that thing to my palette. If I'm right, I'll only have to do this once. Say yes. And then let's re-add that lines palette. I'm going to add this thing. I'm going to Control Shift drag it in here. And now let's see if I add this to add this over here, will it still be diagonalable? Yep, it is. So that took me all of a minute to do it once in MuseScore 3 and then add it to a palette, and now I got it, right? So the question is, will it stay diagonalable if I take this thing and come over to properties and start fiddling with the text, or will that kill its diagonal ability? Let's find out. Nope, still diagonalable, still draggable. So yeah, it takes all of a minute to set up, and then it's set up and you should be good to go. So, but it would also be good to make sure that that is make sure that that's logged on GitHub, that allow diagonal is missing. I kind of thought I remember there being an issue for it, but I don't see it right now, but we'll take a look. So the hooks, yeah, you can totally get the hooks on both ends also. Go to here, start hook. You want this way. I remember, MuseScore 4.0 didn't let you set that start hook, but that's been present for many months. They added that long ago. So there's where you set that hook. And if you don't want the text, you can get rid of the text. And now you just have the start and end hook, right? So you can do all of those sorts of things. Or if I come back to this version over here, get rid of that text, come over here, get my start hook happening, right? You can do all of that in MuseScore 4. Just the setting of the allow diagonal is apparently not currently possible. But if you bring it in from another score and add it to your custom palette, you are then good to go. So, so there's that. All right, so now Chris is asking about dynamics, and this is a good question. Your question is it good practice to attach dynamics and expressions to voice one? Can you, let's see, in general, yes, is what I would say. If the music itself has multiple voices and you need different dynamics for different voices, MuseScore has never supported that. There's been work done to make that happen, but it didn't make it into MuseScore 4.2. It didn't work in MuseScore 4.3 in MuseScore 3 either, by the way. But the ability of having different dynamics for different voices is coming. It's just not here yet. So given that the dynamic, whatever dynamic you put is going to affect all voices anyhow, I definitely recommend putting them all in voice one, just for the exact reason that you're asking. Something feels right about that. It gives you some consistency about where they are when you export to Music XML, import to another program, or try to convert to Braille or whatever else it's going to probably do better things if there's that level of consistency. As far as MuseScore is concerned, currently it doesn't actually matter. But still, I do think it's good practice, and I recommend it. So can you overlap the end hook with the next hook? So I guess I'd have to see examples of what you mean by that, because pedal lines are designed to line up, and so maybe pedal lines are what you want to use. I don't know. To have that whole thing with angled hooks that line up as create that little carrot looking thing. But so yeah, I'm not sure how that overlapping, what exactly you might mean by that. But let's try this. I'm going to copy that line, come over here, select a note, paste, and just physically drag it. Okay, can it overlap? Well, yeah, it can overlap. I don't know if that's literally what you mean or not, but they can, in fact, overlap as far as that goes. All right, so do I have any other questions that I have missed here? Because I know we're getting close to the end of the session here. And I don't think I've missed. Oh, was that something right above the question about the footer that I missed? Where's that footer question? Catalina. Oh, no, that's the. There's that. There's this custom. Nope. Okay. I think I'm good. So let me, while I wait to see if any last minute questions come in, give you a little bit of heads up on some things. So those of you who are gold level members or are about to be in that position of deciding, you were in the Harmony course, your trial gold level membership just expired. Do you want to renew it? I recommend it, right? I sent you messages. You should have direct messages with details. There's stuff I posted in the Harmony Workshop space talking about what the benefits will be. I just yesterday posted a project, basically just said, hey, let's all create SATB arrangements, and posted a lesson about it. And, that's kind of what our focus will be for this week and next week, at least in Music Masterclass. We'll be focusing on creating SATB arrangements. We'll do other things to kind of other little projects to kind of keep us growing and learning for the month of January. And then at some point, probably beginning sometime in February, probably we will start the Counterpoint course. And by keeping your gold level membership, you will just have access to that. And that's how I'm going to recommend doing things. So, in any case, you'll be hearing more from me about site changes and stuff. As I mentioned, rebranding. You've probably heard me mention Outside Shore Music. This has been my email address. My personal email address has been Marc@Outside Shore since 1996. I don't know how many of you can say that you've had the same email address since 1996, but it's the almost certainly the longest continually running music education site in the world. It's just that there's nothing there now because everything's on my Mastering MuseScore site. So I'm planning on making some simplification, some coalescing of things. In any case, that's all coming up. So lots of big things in store for 2024. The Counterpoint course is going to be a big one. And if you've got other questions about that, feel free to ask in the community, or right here, I can try to answer some questions here in these last couple of minutes here. Let me come back to Chris's question about dynamics. Just to make a point here, I want to talk about right here, if I put a dynamic marking here, I can put a dynamic marking on voice 1 that say is forte, and then I can put a separate dynamic marking, and then I'll put a separate one that says piano. They're going to overlap each other, right? MuseScore doesn't have smart handling of this sort of stuff, but if I take the F and press X to flip it to the top, now I have, something that looks reasonable. Right now, that's all going to play the same dynamic, which apparently is nothing. Here we go. Right, it's playing everything at the same dynamic. It's not separating this out. The work that has already been done is going to make that the case. It's going to make it so that you can have separate dynamics. Or you can say, oh, I want this dynamic marking. And then also, if I change this to pianissimo, triple P, should that apply to both voices or not? So there's still details that they're trying to work out as far as what the interaction should be, if there's a dynamic in one voice but not the other, also how it should work between staves. There's lots of details that are being worked out as far as how this is all going to happen. And so, Chris, as far as your original question about should you just put everything in voice 1 right now, that'll also be the safest bet in terms of how, when this new feature shows up where you can actually have separate dynamics for separate voices, if you want the normal dynamics to work well, it might be the case that for all older scores, dynamics attached to voice 1 automatically apply to all voices. But dynamics that are attached in voice 2 might be set by default to only affect voice 2 once that becomes a thing. So that's another reason to try to keep your dynamics in voice 1 is once MuseScore starts supporting separate dynamics for different voices, I have a feeling voice 1 dynamics will get priority as far as that goes. So something to think about. Yeah, there will be ways, I'm sure, of overriding that and changing it. All right. Well, I feel like I've said what I need to say. So let's flip back to my score here. And here's some music. So thanks, everyone, for being here. Thanks for the questions. And Chris, no, I mean, this is a common observation. A lot of people don't like how romantic, I will say, the string sounds are. It's been, there are already existing issues on GitHub. People post about it, but it's a subjective thing, and the developers like it that way, for better or worse. So as of right now, there are no plans to change it, but it is not something that isn't known. It's something they have made a editorial decision that this is how we want things for now, and maybe eventually they'll change it, but they are aware that there's a request to change. So in any case, hope you've enjoyed this session. Got to talk about a lot of different things. Tomorrow, Music Masterclass, we'll be talking, about choral music and SATB, arranging for 4 voices and what that might mean in terms of instrumental music as well. And that's what we'll be talking about for the next couple of weeks. And I'll be encouraging people to be submitting. I am encouraging, certainly if you're in the gold level membership now, you already hopefully saw where I posted the project and the video to go with it. Let's take a look at some arrangements, some choral arrangements and so forth, and look forward to talking about music tomorrow. And thank you, Stephen. It's nice to be back. So thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time. Bye.